We got to sit down for an hour with Cliff Weitzman, the CEO and founder of Speechify. He is present in the Forbes 30 under 30 list, and being dyslexic, from a very young age, he had to overcome many challenges to be at par with his peers at tasks that we take for granted every day. To conquer this, he created Speechify, an app that can convert any readable medium into a listenable one through the power of text to speech. He made it to help people with dyslexia as well as boost the productivity of anyone who does a lot of reading. It is available on iOS, Android, and as a Chrome extension. So today we get to know a little more about him and understand more about the genius behind Speechify.
Thanks a lot for watching us here. I'm here with Cliff Weitzman, the CEO and founder of Speechify. Let's get into the questions. Okay, so Cliff, the first question I want to ask you is about time management. I came across the fact that you've worked on 36 projects alone during your college time. Like having this intense schedule, like intense number of projects you worked on, like what was your schedule and time management like during this time?
Yeah. So when I went into college, I thought that I either wanted to do investment banking or become an entrepreneur. And very quickly, I realized that I did not want to do investment banking. And so I looked, and Brown, where I went to school, was a very open curriculum. They let you make your own major if you decide. And so I made my own major in renewable energy engineering. And so most of my classes were physics, engineering, computer science, but I also took a lot of classes in um, some in design in RISD, and then a lot of philosophy, international relations, and biotech and biomaterials classes. And so I had a really fun time academically because I took only classes that I really enjoyed. But I also had kids in my classes who were varsity athletes. So let's say they were on the soccer team or football team, or they were rowing crew, and but they'd also be studying mechanical engineering. And so they'd be taking engineering classes, and then in the afternoon they would go to practice. And in the weekends they go to games. And I was like, well, if this person can, do mechanical engineering and also be a varsity water polo player, I do the same thing, but my sport is going to be entrepreneurship. And so I would study for school, and then I would, from 5 to midnight work on my projects. And then every weekend I would either go to a hackathon or go to a pitch competition or meet up with a friend and build. I actually had a group of friends where we would go to the dining hall. Every weekend we'd meet at like noon on Saturday and Sunday, and we'd sit in the dining hall from noon until it closed at 9 p.m. and we'd work on projects. And that was just a really wonderful time. And I had built an early version of Speechify when I was a freshman, and it made it easy for me to also get all my schoolwork done. So that was like a key feature, is I didn't need to sit at my desk to do all my readings. I could be on the bus to a hackathon or longboard to breakfast, and I could listen really fast. And then kind of 5 p.m. every day, I'd meet up with my friend Maxim to go work out, and then we'd go directly to dinner because if you want to build muscle, you got to eat enough. I have a tendency to not eat enough. And so that was and I would just get 2 plates of food. And actually what I typically do is I grab a plate of food, find a table of people I didn't know and sit with them. And then finish, have another plate, sit with another table of people I didn't know, grab a cup of tea, sit with another table of people I didn't know. And I would do this more intensely for the first maybe 3 months of every semester. And that way I get to know kind of a lot of the rest of the people in my school, which made me happy and I enjoyed. And then when I graduated, I was trying to figure out what to do full time. And the key was I ended up deciding not to take a job. I convinced 2 of my professors to sponsor me to stay at school, and I stayed as a visiting scholar. But after I graduated school, I convinced 2 of my professors to sponsor me to stay as a visiting scholar at Brown. And so I used that time to build more projects until I finally kind of figured out what I wanted to work on full time. And then I started working on Speechify.
Okay, so to summarize what you said, you would say prioritizing what you want to do, and basically sometimes there isn't really time management and balance there. You have to work on what you want to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, the key there is there's this really good concept that Ramit Sethi talks about in this book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, about money. And it's, you should invest in the things that make you happy and be ruthless in not putting money into the things that you don't enjoy. And I apply this concept to time. So, I love gymnastics. I love working out. I love working on projects. And, I also love dancing. So I would go out with friends every Friday and Saturday night, but I would just go out to the point where people go dancing. I wouldn't go to pre-games because I wasn't interested in drinking or smoking. I don't drink, I don't smoke. And that way I could maximize my time. And so, yeah, exactly. Just invest in the things that make you happy. And if you think something could make you happy, but like be ruthless about not doing the things that are not in your best interest.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, anyone who's hearing this would take a lot away from that. So, like moving on from this, I want to ask you about burnout, right? Like having these huge ambitious goals, and like of course, working with ambitious goals comes intense work, like just I said. So, had you experienced burnout before, and if so, like what got you there, and what got you out of there?
I am very lucky to have never experienced burnout, but I have many friends who have. And the reason I haven't is because I have a very strong support system. So one thing that I spend a lot of time on is listening to audiobooks. I listen to 2 audiobooks a week, about 100 audiobooks a year. And the place where that happens is I wake up, my earphones go in, I brush my teeth, I listen, I eat breakfast, I listen, along for the class, I listen. And I love listening. And so I'd say that kind of 25% of my listening is fantasy books and sci-fi books, another 25 is biographies, another 25 is like philosophy and economics, and another 25 would be a mix of like physics and like random topics. And it just makes me really happy. And then if I start feeling down, the amount of time I spend listening to audiobooks goes down, and the amount of times I call my family goes up. And so I have kind of 2 wonderful parents and 4 younger siblings who I'm very close with, and I'll just talk to them a lot more. And in Speechify, I'm lucky that I work with a lot of people who I really admire and think extremely highly of, and are very good-hearted people. It's something that we look for. And so there was one point where I was close to feeling burnout, but I would have felt burnout there, not because I was overworking. Burnout, I think, in reality happens when you don't. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And so a lot of the times in startups, no matter how hard you work, how strategic you are, there's still an element of luck. And there was a point where we weren't seeing the data that we wanted in Speechify, and it was very frustrating. And I was considering maybe I'll do something else, maybe it makes sense to pivot. And that was the time where I felt low. And I was very lucky to have Simon, who really stuck by my side. And I remember there was one week where I called 100 users and did interviews with them and figured out kind of what we needed to change, what was the issue, and we figured it out. We solved it. We moved on. We started making progress again. And, you know, in some of the fantasy books that I really enjoy, there's these types of characters called OP characters, overpowered characters. And they're very strong characters, and I enjoy reading about them. And one thing that they all have in common is they have a massive bias towards action. They never sit around in bed. They just do stuff. It doesn't matter if they're going on a walk, they're going to find a girl, they're going to train, they're going on an adventure or on a quest. That's why the books are interesting. And so for me, I also have a lot of goals in different spheres. I have goals around fitness, around music, around family, around love, around entrepreneurship. And in times where the company is not making as much progress as I would like for it to make, I focus on other spheres of my life. Usually it'll be fitness. Because fitness, I know exactly what you put in is what you get. The body is a science equation. And in times where the business is just absolutely taking off and I don't have time for anything else, I just focus on the business. I focus a little bit less on fitness. And I think that the family support, the audiobooks, and having goals in multiple areas, it's like a table with multiple legs. It's very hard to make it fall because even if one leg is off, the other ones are still holding you up. Those stuff have kept me from experiencing burnout. I really hope that I don't. Most realistically, I expect to live to 200, so I'm sure I will experience burnout at some point. The advice I would give myself is do the things that I just discussed and eat good food.
That's brilliant. I think a lot of people do underestimate like the actual power of having proper support system and like the mode of inspiration, right? Everyone runs out of inspiration. Like I think I heard this quote somewhere that says inspiration and motivation is like taking a shower. That's why you recommend like you need to do it every day. You need a dose of it every day. Right? Yeah. I think that makes sense. That was really helpful. So talking about something that you mentioned during this was luck. Right, so this is sort of controversial because different people have different opinions about it. Some do believe in it, some do not believe in it. Right, So, like, what do you define luck as? Like, what part do you think has played till now in your journey?
I think everybody believes in luck. I don't think that there's someone out there who doesn't believe luck as a concept. But I think that you can make your own luck. So that's the key. And so there's a sentence, something along the not. I'm butchering the quote, but it's something like luck is when the preparation meets opportunity. And so that's like kind of true. Like imagine I'm reading a fantasy book about a warrior right now. So he trains for like 4 hours every day. And then one day, someone attacks someone and he's there and he protects them, etc. And, it happens to be a princess, whatever. So this guy was in the right place at the right time, but he also has been training for 4 hours a day for the last 3 years. Luck is when, preparation meets opportunity. But no, that's not a good enough example. I'll give you a better example. Luck is you setting up the framework for yourself. So when I was in school and started Speechify, I really wanted to be Richard Branson because he's dyslexic. And, I read his books a couple of times. So I snuck into the Forbes 30 Under 30 conference in order to try and meet him because he was a speaker. I messaged like 12 people to try and get a ticket. Eventually someone gave me a ticket. I climbed the roof and snuck in through the service elevator to try and meet him. I met his secretary, got her email, got her phone number, tried to set up a meeting. And when none of those things worked, when he got off the stage, I hopped the barrier and then like calmly walked with him to his car and like tried to talk to him about Speechify. And then I stuck into another event that he was going to. And then I stuck into another event that he was going to. And then I stuck into another event that he was going to. This was over the course of 4 years. And then every time someone would ask me, who's a person that you want to meet? I had a list of like 10 people I was trying to meet, and Richard Branson was on that list. And eventually, someone introduced me to someone who introduced me to someone who worked for him. And that was maybe the 6th person I've been introduced to who worked in Virgin. And then Richard and I met. We became like close. He became a Speechify investor. I also at some point like made a YouTube video about wanting to do a project with him. And so there's a really powerful quote from Abraham Lincoln, which is, you cannot fail unless you quit. And there's a beautiful work of art called The Portrait of a Successful Failure. And it goes something like, I'm butchering the years, but 1517, fails in business. 1524, fiance dies. 1524, has a nervous breakdown. 1513, defeated an election for mayorship. 1517, defeated an election for Senate. 23, defeated an election for House of Representative. 1550, defeated an election for House of Representative again. 1565, defeated an election for vice president. 1564, elected president of the United States of America. You cannot fail unless you quit, Abraham Lincoln. And so if you just do not stop, you're going to make luck for yourself. And so the way that I think about this is, there's IQ, which is intelligence quotients, the EQ, which is emotional intelligence, and there's AQ, which is adversity quotient. And so the place that I think am the strongest in is AQ. Adversity quotient is how persevering are you when things are hard. And part of the thing that facilitates this is what we talked about before when it comes to burnout. I think about a startup like a Jeep in the savannah. You're driving along and there's rivers and there's roads and there's rocks. You got to make sure there is air in your wheels. No air in your wheels, you have to stop. So even if you have a little bit of air, that's key. And that a lot of it comes from your support system. And if you look at investing, for example, if you look at all the statistics, the way to invest is it's not timing the market, it's time in the market. So when it comes to luck, there's going to be 7 days that make up for the majority of the returns in the stock market every single year. Statistically, you have to be in the market to pick up on those days. And so longevity has a lot to do with luck, as well as being strategic about setting it up for yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think like persistence is also like one of those things people do not like entirely get until unless they've experienced it themselves. Like you also, I think another example like you could take for yourself would be the situation where you had to convince yourself to convince people to get you into the Dyslexic conference initially. You had to advertise, like go on the stage there, advertise for Speechify. Right? Yeah, so I think persistence is that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and that story, is a good example because it was in a very short period of time. Most of my stories around perseverance are over the course of years. But it's like going to the gym. You build the muscle for being extremely persevering. And when you just are so used to it, you don't even bat an eyelash at asking someone to give you a special exception. And I think it's key. And so you just got to practice perseverance like you practice any art.
Yeah. No, that was definitely helpful. So another sort of like around the same topic would be decision making. So to the place to be the place you're right now, having Speechify and like having achieved the success, like you for sure would have had to make some tough calls, tough decisions along the way regarding various aspects, maybe your business, personal life, right? So what would you suggest, or what would be like the strategy for people to like make these tough calls?
Yeah, so it used to be a PDF, now it's a book called Principles by Ray Dalio. Highly recommended. It's really good about making decisions. The other books I'd recommend is How to Win Friends by Dale Carnegie and The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And if you want to go really deep, Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle and Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Nietzsche. And I have a different style for decision making than most people, and so it starts with building your own table of values. Ray Dalio would call it your principles. And so the way that I started is I wrote a 30-page paper about my worldviews, and I distilled it down into 24 principles that are non-obvious that I follow. Nietzsche talks about this concept of the Übermensch, which is someone who makes their own values. They don't take it from the pulpit or their parents or their education. They evaluate the world outside themselves, and they take the values that make the most sense to them. And then, you want to be strategic, and your brain is like you have a mental model of the universe. You want to fill this model with as many pieces of data as possible. It's like a map. The more you zoom in, the more pixelated it gets. But for example, if you spend a lot of time learning about marketing and business, that area is more fleshed out, while your partner who's a Flutter developer, everything around Flutter is more fleshed out, but might be a little bit more pixelated around SEO. And so feed that model with as much data as possible, and that model will help you make good decisions because it's a predictive model of the world and how the world will react to things that you do. There's a bunch of different mental models for how to make decisions. For example, Jeff Bezos often talks about the regret minimization framework. Paul Graham has a couple of really good essays about this. One is called Sailing Upwind. If you don't know what to do, just do the hardest thing that is possible, because then you're kind of like building up potential energy in terms of having the ability to have more luck later. And so from a personal perspective, the way I make decisions is I read a lot and I write a lot, and then I think, and then I basically have been very good my entire life at not being swayed by peer pressure to do things. It doesn't matter where it might be, right? Might have peer pressure not to jump on stage, I'll still jump on stage. I'm not going to go. I think it'll be fun for me and wholesome. I just view the world in a different way than most people do, because I've put time thinking about it. And I think from first principles. Pros and cons lists are also really good ways of thinking. And I call my family and my friends and I tell them, yo, I'm thinking about this. And I just tell them the story and they tell me their thoughts. And then as an organization, as a company, you need to align on how you make decisions. And so you write down the company values. And so a really great book that I highly recommend is Working Backwards about the building of Amazon. It was written by a couple of Jeff Bezos's lieutenants. And so a lot of the values there are actually values that we use at Speechify, not because we read them in the book, but because we came up with them before we read the book. But the book helped us come up with additional ones that are not the same but different, that fit our culture. And so a lot of the company culture principles at Speechify came from the way that my principles, the principles that Simon or Chaitu have. And so codifying your principles helps you make decisions very often. And then, you just got to make some decisions around human nature. So I think that by default, most people are good and they'll smile at you if you smile at them. And they'll help you if you ask for help. And, you reached out to me with a random DM. I was like, I can take, 20 minutes to do this. Sure. And but it was because you came organized and prepared. You had like a pitch of what you wanted. You wrote coherently, etc. And so some people think that inherently people are, will stab you in the back. And so I hope that I continue going my life. And when such things happen, I go, my mental model of the universe predicted this. It's not that people are inherently bad. It's that there is this situation that I realize there's context for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, taking as much data as possible. It's like a computer. You take in as much data as possible, you organize the information in your brain, and then you make an operation.
That makes sense. I think also like at the end of the day, like the only way you can actually come up with something satisfying is you infer yourself from all various different aspects of diversity of resources, right? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That was really helpful. So another one small topic I want to talk about before we move on to the next big topic would be about funding. Like referring back to that, you worked on 36 different projects back in the day. During college time, especially the hardware ones. You talk about your longboard, your 3D printing, your brakes for longboards. What was the experience like? How was the funding for that then?
Yeah, so pretty early on at Brown, there was a pitch competition. Actually, no, even before that, I went to a hackathon. So I did a hackathon the summer before I started college, and I loved it. It was a really positive experience, and I wanted to do more of them. I messaged the person who organized the hackathon, and they told me that there was going to be another hackathon not too far away from where I was going to college. So I went. I was 18 years old, and I led a team of 7 people, and I won. And I was the youngest person there. It was I think it was 70 people. And they gave me, a couple of resources, and that was great. And that was for board break. And then there was a pitch competition at Brown, and it was a 1-minute pitch competition, and the winner got $1,000. And I was like, $1,000? I'm going to have to work in the dining hall for 6 months to earn $1,000 post-tax. So I found the Facebook profile at the time of the person who had won this competition the year before. He was a guy who was a senior who had graduated, and I got him on the phone, and I got advice from him on how to win. And then I did this with the person who did it the year before. And I said, you know what? All these other folks, they're going to come to this thing. They would have prepared an hour, maybe 2 hours. I'm going to train for 24 hours for this event. And so I would go into the dining hall, and I would go to the random tables, and I would be like, hey, can I pitch you guys this thing I'm working on? And they're like, sure. And I'd time 60 seconds and I'd pitch it. And then I'd ask them to pitch it back to me. And any sentence they didn't include, I'd cross out, rewrite, and put it back in another way so that you could remember it easily in 60 seconds. And so I went, and this other guy had the same idea, Max Deutsch. And he got first place, I got second place. But we became really good friends, and we started a bunch of other stuff together later. And don't worry, I won all the other pitch competitions after. But I got $500 from that for board break. And then I went and I did a similar pitch competition at MIT, and I won that 2 years in a row. And then I won some stuff at Stanford and some stuff at Harvard. And so I got most of the funding for the projects from, pitch competitions. And then I ended up at some point hiring 10 freelancers in the Philippines to find and apply to scholarships for me full time. So basically, I had to make a Google sheet numbered 1 to 100 and fill it with scholarships for people who are dyslexic, studying math, studying entrepreneurship, studying energy or physics, or they're Jewish or from Marin County, have a GPA of above a certain amount. At the time, I was not a U.S. citizen, so needed to be eligible as a non-U.S. citizen. And then they made all these, and the scholarship had to be $5,000 and above. So they made a list for me. And then later I had them make a second list. And then I had them take the dates when the scholarships were due and put them on my calendar as a work block and match it with an existing essay that I'd written that related to the topic. And then I'd go in, I'd edit the essay, I'd submit. So I submitted first 100 applications, then another 100 applications to these scholarships. And I won 9 or 8 of these big scholarships. And so that both helped me pay for college, but also some of them helped me fund some projects. So that's for board break. And then for the other things, most of the stuff I built was digital products because it was so annoying to get resources to, do tooling or do biomedical, I built a biotech supplement. It's very hard to do that kind of stuff. And then, I built this iPhone app called Starter Pack. I started coding it in the dining hall at Brown, but then I did most of the work on a flight from Boston to San Francisco. It was like 5-6 hour flight, and I built it. I published it, and 2 months later, it had, or however many months later, it had 100,000 users now. Wow, I've been working on WordBreak for so long, barely has any users. So I should be doing tech stuff. And so, in the beginning there, I would just build the stuff myself. And then later I started hiring people on Upwork. And, when I started hiring those freelancers on Upwork, you might go, well, Cliff, where'd you have the money to do that? I did one internship in my entire life. It was at a place called Retell Me Not. And I got paid $30 an hour. And I was like, great, I get paid $30 an hour. I can hire 10 people for $3 an hour. So I hired 10 people for $3 an hour. And that's what I did with the salary that I made. And then when I was doing that job, I also would freelance myself as an iOS developer on Upwork for $40 an hour, building out for an app school. Yeah.
I think like this just goes back to the point of when you were saying like just preparation, just meeting all the opportunities. Yeah, no, this definitely makes sense. Like this goes back around just to say how working hard never gives up on you. Hey, that's brilliant. Yeah, so one last thing I want to talk to you about was dyslexia and your experience with dyslexia, right? A lot of people have know what dyslexia is, but there's for sure a lot of misunderstanding to what it actually is. I want to ask you, what are some premonitions about dyslexia that actually aren't simply true? And but what was like the actual difficult part of it that made it the most challenging for you in your journey?
Yeah, so dyslexia manifests itself differently in different people. To give you context, 17% of the population has dyslexia, 5% of the public school system in the US is diagnosed, and 40% of billionaires have dyslexia. Turns out that if you suck at the one thing that you're supposed to do when you're 9 years old, you either go down a bad path or you become just like very resilient. For me, the most hard thing about dyslexia is reading a sentence takes me as much energy and brain power as most people take to do a long division equation in their head. And so, I read a sentence or two, I'm tired. I read a paragraph, I'm exhausted. I read a chapter, I'm asleep. The part that's difficult is actually not reading, it's decoding. It's called phonemic awareness. So for example, if I read Anish's name on the screen, Aneesh, Anish. So it's hard. And I'm over exaggerating here. Eventually what happened is I learned how to sight read, and it's because of Speechify. So with Speechify, I was listening to 200,000 words a week. I still do. And it highlights the words on the screen as it speaks them in my ear. So if I see the word house and I hear the word house like 10,000 times, I don't need to do decoding anymore. I just know a house is a house, in the same way that if I look at a photo of a dog, I know it's a dog. And then, with dyslexia, spelling is kind of tough. Not kind of very tough. Sometimes you mistake your left and rights. It's hard to remember people's names. And so for spelling as well, I used to, even spell check wasn't good enough to help me. I used to have be in the academic workshop period 1 hour a day in school. And I'd have a teacher assistant who would tell me which one of the options. Sorry. And I had a teacher assistant who would tell me, of the words on the screen with the red squiggly lines, if you click on it and there's like 5 options, he'd tell me which one I need to click. And then with Speechify, I can hear the difference between the word spellings. And so that was a huge benefit in helping me get over the spelling mistake issues, but most importantly with the reading issues. So someone with dyslexia would read at 140 words per minute. Normal people read at 200 words per minute. I listen 3.5 times faster. I listen at like 750. And so that to me is like freedom, because imagine if you needed to watch a YouTube video at 0.5x speed, you get so bored. And so I watch YouTube by default at like 2.5, 3x speed. You mentioned Graham. Graham also watches YouTube videos by default at 2x speed. He edits it, that's good too. Yeah, those are the biggest impacts. And then because that is such an important thing when you're 9 years old, there's also an emotional thing that comes into it, and around confidence and self-value and how your parents treat you when you have it and how your teachers treat you when you have it. So, your teachers might think that you're slow, your parents might think you're lazy, and you should develop this like amazing level of like personal agency and think you're awesome. You just need to find a way to prove it to people, and that's what happened to me. Is that's how I thought about things. And so it's coaching yourself, it's managing your emotions and how you think and feel. And that's a superpower if you can figure out how to do it. And then, the tricks for me is my dad read to me, and then I found audiobooks, and then I built Speechify. And I just outworked most people in most rooms I've been in. And that's how you figure out the way around it.
Wow.
And you find good people and surround yourself with them. They help you when you're not good
Yeah,
at
I
stuff.
think this reminds me of like the question I was asking about decision making, and you said it's about perseverance. Pursuing, like, yeah, right. I think this just like tells you like, oh, you have to overcome so many challenges as being dyslexic. Like, this is the example you gave us. I think you were just prepared for this from like the very start. That was
Exactly.
so.
Yeah. And with coding, it makes it really difficult too, because you misspell variables. So I would just, I did the intro to CS class at Brown when I was a sophomore, second year. Most people take probably like an hour to do the first assignment. It took me like 10. I'm butchering the time. But what I did is I would just like make 8 peanut butter sandwiches, go to the computer science lab, and just work from like 9 a.m. to midnight every day on computer science for the first semester. And then, my programs used to crash all the time, and it took me 3 times longer to do all the assignments. And then eventually I started to tell the difference between bugs that were due to spelling and bugs that were real. And then beyond that point, I started to get good. And so sometimes you just got to brute force it.
The reason that like I found your story truly inspiring. Like you hear about stories like about Elon Musk. He developed a game at age 12, sold it for $1 million. Like at highly like these stories, right? But like when I came across your story, it was like you had to overcome all of these obstacles, and then you're at the point you are right now. It's like you. Like by default, you develop a different sort of respect for people like you, and that's like I find it truly inspiring.
I appreciate that, but I will make one point. Naval Ravikant has a great line, which is, you can't be jealous of a person unless you want to completely switch lives with them. And I wouldn't want to switch lives with anybody. And if I had to, I'd switch lives with my brother. And to the closest person to me. Every person has struggles in their lives and challenges. Like even the person who's, born to really rich parents in a really nice area, who's really smart, satisfaction in life is what you expect minus what you get is equal to how happy you are. So that person already has such high expectations and the world is expecting so much of them. It's very hard to live up to them. And so the difference between what they accomplished and where they start is it's so hard to make it big that they're almost doomed to not be happy, which is a funny concept when you think about it. But if you start low, you have such a big margin of happiness that you can gain over time. And Elon Musk, so just to give him as an example, brilliant guy, very talented, didn't have the most supportive, dad. I had a super supportive dad. He was born 30 years before me at a time where there were less resources. Although, it was a great time for if you wanted to get into the computer tech industry. His parents didn't move to the United States. He had to get himself into the United States. So, for every benefit that someone else has that you don't have, you have some benefits that they don't have that you might not even realize. And so, I'm lucky that my challenge was very well defined in the academic realm, but from a family perspective, I got really lucky. And I got lucky that I found audiobooks when I did. And, I think I was born with a little bit more confidence than most people are. And that's been extremely helpful for me in my life. And I realized this concept of like being able to self-coach myself and how important learning was very early on. I was just very open and very curious and just very desiring to make myself the best person that I can be. And so what I would say is just figure out how to amplify that desire in yourself, find awesome friends to work with, and also just optimize for happiness. Like if I look at Elon Musk, though I admire him tremendously and have for 10 plus years now, he doesn't seem happy. And so I think that's another thing that's like super important to take care of as
That's very true. So another thing like I noticed was about Speechify. Like when I came across Speechify, like the website, your story behind Speechify, why you built Speechify, it reminded me of this a speech or like TED talk given by Simon Sinek about start with why. It's like most leaders know what they do and how they do it, but never like why they do it, right? So like your story and Speechify, what Speechify does is like you guys have a solid why you do it. Yeah, I think that's the most inspiring part. That's why it's most inspiring. Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. I have not thought about that in relation to that talk, but I guess you're correct.
Yeah, that's it. So you talked to the one last thing, if you don't mind. Okay, so this is about like you talk about self confidence that you had slightly as extra, and like you still had to overcome all these challenges because of being dyslexic. It's about fitness. I've seen you a huge advocate for fitness on all platforms, YouTube, Instagram, right? So myself, like my self confidence in my entire life, like a huge part of my life was entirely changed because of fitness, working out for the past 2-3 years. Like, so what role has it played in your day to day life and also your mental health?
Oh, so much. So, I'd say that other than dyslexia, one big challenge was I was very vertically challenged. I was 5'2" freshman year, 5'3" sophomore year of high school, which is very short. I was like shorter than all the boys, shorter than all the girls. So, junior year I became like 5'6", and then senior year I started to like grow. So now I'm like 5'10". But I grew very late, and I was also very light. So I have like a driver's license where it says that I'm 5'3" and 110 pounds. I'm now 185. And so I read a book called The 4-Hour Body by Tim Ferriss when I was 18. And before that, I watched a movie called Prince of Persia. And Jake Gyllenhaal had a really nice shoulder arm connection. I was like, well, I want that. So I started training and trying to lift weights. And before that, I was already really into gymnastics and parkour. And so I think that, learning how to do backflips and stuff like that already got me into a sense of like, one, I loved it. Two, it teaches you a lot of perseverance. And I was good at it because of perseverance. And so then I started eating a caloric excess when I got to college and training most days. And it just, number one, it clears your head. If you have ADD, it's like non-negotiable. You have to exercise every day. And number two, it's so fun for, hanging out with people. I don't like wasting time. And so if I want to hang out with 3 people in one day, I'll just go to the gym 3 times in a day and do 3 workouts. And it definitely increases your confidence. It definitely increases your confidence. I'll give you an example. I was having dinner with Logan Paul yesterday, he was asking me, how's your diet? And I was like, well, it's a little bit less good than normal because I've been focusing on a couple of other projects. And he's like, well, what's your next goals there? And I told him I want to be 190 pounds and 10% body fat. He's like, 190 pounds? Why do you want to be that big? And I was like, well, Logan, you're tall. You've always been tall. And so, you get a natural respect in without anything. So I can't get myself taller, but I can get myself broader. And so I don't know if I'm going to stay at that amount, but I just want to get there, know what it feels like, live there for a couple of months, and then I'll go back to being lighter because it takes a lot of work to stay at that of muscle mass. Hey, Eric. Oh, I didn't realize I answered. I'm going to call you back. Hopefully you can still hear me in the last at that level of muscle mass. But even today, there was a day when someone invited me to this competition they were doing in France when I was a senior. They convinced me to skip a final to go and do it. And then we took like a 24-hour trip to France, to Paris. And I didn't speak French. And it was like a little awkward, but this was during a time where I was really into fitness. My chest was really big. And I was walking through the room, and I felt like it's like people were not like, who is this random person who's not exactly supposed to be here? It doesn't even speak French. People gave me the benefit of the doubt just because of it. Or when I give talks, I start with a backflip, instant credibility. People actually desire to know what I have to say because I've demonstrated that I am able to do a thing that most people can't, and it looks cool. I love that I can control my body. So the idea that the body is a science equation and you can just tweak it as you want, it makes you feel so good that you're in control. And I've had at this point, hundreds, if not thousands of people who I've convinced to start counting macronutrients or teaching them how to lift. And I can see just how much joy it gives all of them. So many people on our team, same thing. And then from mental health perspective, if you start going down in mental health, invest more time in fitness. It's the easiest way. It's the cheapest way for you to get happiness. It's just unbelievable the returns on investment there is with fitness and how much confidence it gives you. And it's one of the basics, right? At the end of the day, now this is going very first principles. Humans' deepest desire, everybody, is to feel loved, to feel accepted. That's the thing most people want. And so the first thing that you should do is invest in your family, invest in your friends, build that. And how do you get that? You give love. If you make other people feel loved, they will make you feel loved. That's the easiest way to do it. And so that's the highest return on investment for happiness. I'd say the second one is listening to audiobooks. And the third one is like eating good macronutrients, not eating junk, and then lifting. And then after that, do whatever the heck you want. You're basically guaranteeing yourself happiness because you're taking care of 90%.
That was brilliant. I think everyone who watched it definitely like got to know a lot of stuff. Especially me. I think I was waiting for this for the past 3-4 days, and this is my first time doing it, so I was like extremely nervous. So finally, I'm less nervous now. I can feel pretty confident. And also about the fitness thing, or like anyone who's tried out like can truly relate to that. It's like it's the one of the most common things that like anyone who's worked out can like relate to and understand that. So yeah, this was brilliant. So that's all the questions I had. And yeah, thanks a lot again for being here. Yeah, anything you want to say to the viewers, like and to me, messages, any sort of life lessons?
Oh, well, what I would say is number one, download Speechify on the iOS store, Android store, Chrome extension store. It'll make it easier for you to focus so you never procrastinate. It'll make it easier for you to understand, retain information, and you can coach yourself to listen fast. And it's just absolutely life-changing. In addition to Speechify, you should download Audible, start listening to audiobooks. You should learn how to code, so maybe check out the Rob Percival course on Udemy. And you should count your macronutrients. The way to do that is for every pound of weight that you have, eat 1.3 grams of protein. If a guy eat like 60 grams of fat per day, and then figure out what your caloric maintenance is, and make up the rest of it in carbs. So for me, I eat 2,100 calories a day, 210 grams of protein, 60 grams of fat, and it'll be somewhere between like 130 and 220 grams of carbs. And yeah, just give love to other people. That's it. That's the summary. Enjoy.
That was brilliant. That was extremely helpful, and thanks a lot for being here again. So yeah, that's it, man. I would love to build the same connection with you, the same contact, and yeah, I'll be definitely following your journey. It's a very interesting, inspiring one. So yeah,
you got it, guys, and just send me that clip. I think you have my email.
Yeah, definitely, I'll do that.
See ya.
Thanks. See ya.